Hey, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending when you've tuned in to this edition of Hypnosis Week Live. Yes, it's me again by birth, Alex William Smith, but known by many of you better by my stage name, Jonathan Royal, the British bad boy of hypnosis of magicalguru.com. And I've got another amazing guest for you this week, a gentleman who I met a number of years ago now. And we first met when he came to one of my live training events. We then got talking, we hit it off, and I turned around, and because I resonated with this gentleman, I actually turned around, believe it or not, and asked him about doing his NLP training. We're doing NLP training with him, practitioner, master practitioner, and trainers. And for those who know me, you'll think, seriously? Well, those who know me, if you don't have me on Facebook, you might actually want to go on Facebook and look around my photo albums that are public, and you'll see that despite the fact that I'm very outspoken about hypnosis, NLP, or whatever fancy name you might want to give it to market and sell it these days, I do probably more what's getting termed CPD, continuing professional development. I prefer to call it being nosy and seeing what other courses are teaching, and is there really anything new out there? And generally speaking, there isn't. So I do stuff, but every now and again, I've had people in the past say to me, "Ooh, you're teaching NLP, and you're not even a qualified NLP trainer," which is nonsense, because we could have that argument, and maybe we will later, that the only people who could really say you were NLP trainers is Bandler and Grinder, or people that they'd qualified to be trainers, or part of that lineage, because after all, it is just a trading style and name that Richard came up with to avoid the fact that hypnotherapy wasn't allowed where he was in America at the time. It's pretty much the same. But if we go with that argument that it has to be Bandler or Grinder, given that I'm acutely aware that Richard Bandler knows who I am, I don't know if he's watched a lot of my DVDs, but I am led to believe he's definitely seen a number of them, and he wasn't, well, he's not particularly pleased at anyone claiming to teach people NLP, because he believes he owns it, which clearly he doesn't legally, because he lost the trademark on it in England. Anyway, my point is that if we go down the lineage thing, the gentleman I'm about to introduce you to is certified by Richard Bandler and John Grinder. He's equally also certified, and including to the level of trainers, with John Overdurf and Julie Silverthorne. Now, a lot of you are thinking that name sounds familiar. Well, that's because probably you've read their book, Training Trances. And if you haven't, it's an amazing book to read. So when I discovered that Richard, A, I resonated with, B, got on with and liked, and C, has, for those who are bothered by such things, the correct pedigree and lineage in regards to NLP, I figured it was a no-brainer to do his course, which I did, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I learned some bits, and the only reason I'm saying some bits and not tons, if I was starting from scratch, so if you're watching this and you've not done an NLP course, you've only done a little tiny bit, I unreservedly recommend that you contact this gentleman via his link below, and I will introduce him in a moment, because you will learn tons. It's only because I'd already been in the business for the best part of 30 years and read literally thousands of books, watched literally hundreds and hundreds of DVDs, and gone course on course. But even though I'd done that, I'm still saying I still learned some new tricks. Just as I did with one of his other major contributions to the industry, before we get to his most recent one, is that he very kindly, he's a member of my Elite Hypnosis Bootcamp, and he very kindly put together a 28 days to success. And this involved effectively doing between an hour sometimes almost 2 hours, generally somewhere in between, video every day for 28 days, covering a different essential area of hypnotherapy, NLP, building your business, how to help people with, you name it, no subject, no stone is left unturned. Taking one each day, explaining it from his point of view and also from his experiences of being a certified Bandler and Grinder NLP practitioner, being a certified John Overdurf and Julie Silverthorne NLP master trainer, and all the other experiences and knowledge he brings to the table, and adding those in as well to add extra icing to the cake to make it even more wonderful for you, and then referring you to the relevant areas inside the Elite Hypnosis Bootcamp. So Bootcamp members who've only joined recently, who are watching this on Hypnosis Week, or rather listening to it, if you're thinking there's too much stuff in the Bootcamp, look at the 28 days to Hypnosis Success first, because each day you will learn stuff for the 28 days. By the 8th of the 28 days, arguably you'll know more than a lot of people who've been on these month-long or 6-month-long hypnotherapy courses. You will, because such is the wonderful training skills of Richard. And you will, by the end of that 28 days, quite justifiably be able to say that you are proficient in rapid instant change hypnosis, which this gentleman's also kindly given us permission as Bootcamp members to use. And then you'll be able to cherry pick from the rest of the bootcamp based on what you've learned off the man I'm about to introduce to you. A man who has worked with bodybuilders to get them to win the world championships. A man who's helped the Welsh national squad football team. He's helped X Factor semi-finalists. He's a best-selling author. He's got a book out called The Journey Inside, Coaching to the Core, which he'll tell us more about shortly. Please welcome to the show. Finally, I bet you're thinking, thank God, let's hear the guest. Please welcome to the show, Richard Haggerty. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing really well. Well, thank you for that very kind and very generous introduction, Alex. It is wonderful to be here. Wonderful to be here. Wonderful to be here.
Let's start right at the beginning. This is the same question I ask everyone week after week, and that is, obviously there was a time when you didn't know about hypnosis, when you didn't know about NLP, when you didn't do coaching, when you didn't do these things. What's your background? What's your journey? How did you get here?
Cool. Well, it was really simple for me. Ever since I was quite small, I've been seeing the world maybe a little bit differently from others, partly because I was brought up in East Africa, and we basically started school 7 in the morning, finished at 12. At 12, I would go to the seaside and I'd swim for 7-8 hours, swim out in the Indian Ocean, I'd go fishing, I'd go on safari, I'd do all these cool things. And then I got sent to boarding school in England when I was about 9 or 10. And, you know, people sort of say, oh, I wonder what it's like if an alien goes to another planet or comes to Earth. What would they feel like? Well, that was like it for me. And the way that other people were seeing the world was just very different from me. So it's taken me a long time to kind of try and understand that. But I think what it is there's cultural hypnosis, there's our individual hypnosis and conditioning. And very early on, I realized that there were skills that I had and perceptions that other people didn't, and there were things that I couldn't do. And so I've always sought to plug those gaps through, you know, since I was very little, mind mapping, speed reading, method of loci, using your mind, your imagination. And I really, really loved all that stuff. And it always gave me an edge when it came to exams. So I could pretty much beat most people by studying less, cherry picking, like I know you're really great at, cherry picking the few things that make the difference, nailing them, and going in and delivering. And so I went on doing this, to cut a long story short, I went on doing this for years. I think there was a missing part for me was managing my state on occasion, just being able to stay motivated, stay connected to something. And about 20 years ago, I stumbled into a hypnosis training. Actually, it was an NLP training. I only went to that because I heard it was going to help with accelerated learning and using your mind. Uh-huh. Staggered into it. It was all about hypnosis. And I suddenly realized, I was amazed that you could feel good inside. You could feel comfortable inside. I could feel completely motivated, switched on, alive, my mind focusing incredibly well without needing a cigarette, a joint, you know, a beer, stuffing my face full of something. That I could get that. I could train myself internally. I could reach a state of focus very quickly and easily without anything on the outside. And it was a moment for me. I remember the induction. Somebody did a very basic induction, setting up a few sliding anchors on my arm. It was one of Bandler's trainings. It wasn't the greatest induction ever, but the guy was very good. The guy I was working with in the audience was very kind. And I felt so good inside. It stayed with me. At that moment, I knew this is what I want to do. I want to help other people break through their own limitations. Doesn't matter where they are, what background, break through those limitations as well. Because for me, I realized that no longer did my history, the world, the outside have any real relevance to my success, how I felt inside. I could literally choose how I wanted to be, how I wanted to interact with the world. I could trust myself, trust my unconscious, I guess, as Erickson used to say. So that's kind of my journey in a nutshell. And ever since then, I've just been, I just love all things hypnosis, really, all things unconscious mind, the neuroscience, the placebo effect, priming, symbolism. Doesn't matter what it is. If it's out there, I want to find out about it. I want to learn about it. I want to use it.
You worked, do I recall correctly, you used to work for, I'm trying to remember the name, did all the mind gadgets and...
Yes.
Mind
absolutely.
tools or something.
Absolutely. So there's so over the years I've worked for I've that interest has gone kind of in parallel with personal development. So I used to review all the latest products from Learning Strategies Corporation in America, who are a really big one. They do the paraliminals, photo reading. I used to do it for Nightingale Conant. But there's a company in England which had one of the other than Nightingale Conant, had the biggest mailing list at the time, which is Life Tools.
That's it, Life Tools.
Yeah, there's a wonderful gentleman, Chris Payne, who's a good friend of mine, who built that company up over many years, and really introduced a lot of the kind of mind development technologies. And I used to basically, what happened was I was a very enthusiastic customer. I used to review all the products anyway. I used to have conversations with him, and I loved this stuff. And where it really worked, I let him know, I let the producers know. And basically, at a certain point, I contacted the US and I said, look, you have got these great tools, photo reading, deep trance notification, image streaming. I think you should put together this course. And I gave an outline and I contacted that company. And a few months later, they started doing it. In fact, they produced their best-selling product ever, sold it worldwide. And obviously, I didn't ask anything about it. As you know, I love ideas. I'm happy to share them. And Chris contacted me. He said, Rich, they only went and made that product that you told them to do.
Yeah.
And he said, look, I'm doing a seminar for this. Will you come along? Long story short, we got to know each other really well, became friends with his family. And Chris was producing a product at the time called the Effort-Free System. It's a really cool system. And he'd asked me to help him with that, help me to produce it. So we worked together for around, I can't remember how many it was. We worked together over quite a few months, many years back, to produce that. And again, that for him was a really big hit. So so I'm very familiar with personal development stuff. I can tell you that the vast majority, 99%, doesn't do what it says it's going to do on the tin, but there is that 1% that can make a big difference.
Well, there you go. You've just knocked off half a dozen of my questions with that one statement. 99% of it doesn't do what's on the tin. We both agree on that for sure. Yeah. Yes. But there is that tiny bit that does, isn't there?
There is, and I think now over the last particularly over the last 5 years, I've started working much more with pretty much hypnotists and coaches, people who basically our job is, if we're working one-to-one or with groups, we've got to help them do one thing: have certainty that they can absolutely do what they need to do. They have certainty they can overcome their problem, certainty they can learn, certainty they can break through in these times, certainty their business is going to be resilient, certainty that really they can transform. When we're talking about certainty, let's be really clear what we mean about that. We're talking about the placebo effect practically in action. As a hypnotist, you've got to transform your own mindset and attitude so much. Your hypnotic intent, whether you're using prestige suggestions, whatever, has got to be so firm that the person you're working with has no option but to start to believe in themselves. And that's where the real magic and real interest happens. And I think that is the challenge, even with the 1% of stuff that's really good. If you don't have that framework around it built properly, the results can be a bit wobbly and a bit hit and miss. So I've kind of jumped in. I've gone off on a bit of a tangent, but does that make sense?
No. I find that. I'm sure that'll keep happening over the next hour or so. I'm going to just catch up on something you just said there. There's a bit of an oxymoron there, and I agree with you entirely. Intent, it's got to be there. It's got to be so. You were so confident that it's transmitted to them. I think a lot of therapists fall down on that one though, because they think that means that you've got to go completely down the authoritarian hypnotist approach. You will do this. You will stop smoking. And it puts them off because that may not be their personality.
You got it. Absolutely.
But it is possible actually to have that intent and project it and still use your more permissive Ericksonian type approaches, isn't it?
Spot on. Absolutely. You got it in one. So the model I would use for this, if somebody wants something practical, they can go away and really use this. And one of the best models in the world, hands down, nobody can dispute unmastered authority in this field, is Chris Voss, the FBI hostage negotiator. Mm-hmm. And his book, Never Split the Difference. And basically what his approach is exactly that. You stay calm. You have your radio DJ voice. He calls it like your radio DJ voice. You stay calm. Doesn't matter what's going on. The calmness and the certainty, it's the certainty and the calmness that you project. And you allow the other person to express their emotion. You see, there's a real problem in academia and in courses around influence. They assume that people are rational, whereas all the people who are experts in this field understand that we're totally irrational and we function by emotion. Mm-hmm. However, we do kind of like want to get that part of the brain, sort of the neocortex and so forth. We want to kind of be able to reconnect with that, and you have to do that by meeting people where they're at. And so you're exactly right. It's the certainty that you have, but it can be a calm certainty. You have to have certainty, if you will, like a hypnotic willpower, hypnotic certainty that you can deliver to the people that you're with. And that means you need to develop your own rituals in your day-to-day life inside your own mind so that you trigger that placebo effect inside yourself. Another way of saying that is total belief. Mm-hmm. That you absolutely can do it. And you want to marry that up with solid skills. So you want the confidence, but you want the competence, so that they're together, absolutely. So that when you're with somebody else, the very fact that you're with them in that style that's right for you, that's right for your audience, that's right for the person you're with, comes across. And you're right, I tend to sort of have a mixture between the more kind of calm. I mean, the ideal is to have a spectrum there when you're working with somebody, because you might, as a hypnotist, on occasion, want to kind of just get somebody a little bit more, just ramp things up a little bit for them, just make it a little bit more high energy. But other times you want to calm, you want to bring it back. So it's really helpful to have that flexibility. But you're right.
It can also be a good pattern interrupt as well, can't it? If they think you're Mr. or Mrs. or Miss, or whatever you title listener, we don't want to offend anyone, and you've been authoritarian all the way through, and then suddenly you're so calm and almost emotionless, that'll come unexpectedly, or vice versa. If you're
absolutely
permissive all the way through, and then suddenly, for Christ's sake, get your head together.
Definitely.
That's going to be a total shock to the system.
Beautiful. You exactly. And we can do this the other way around. So another great, model of just really wonderful person to read and look at in terms of sales is Jordan Belfort. The Wolf of Wall Street, and I remember you very kindly once gave me the DVD of that. But one of the things he'll do is, so he'll be speaking, and you might have a typical sales patter going on, which of course is hypnosis. It's where we're helping somebody trigger the placebo effect inside themselves to realize that we're the person who can help them deliver the product or service. And of course, if you can do that, then absolutely you have business doing that. And so you can be going along, and at a certain point, you may need to shift your body. But if you recall, when we started this conversation, you had something really important that you wanted to achieve, and now you can come back, so you can do it the other way round. He calls this, he basically will go from the very uptime kind of thing into, I think the way he does is he kind of looks around the room and moves in, and he
Like he's
slows
telling them
down.
a secret.
He is telling them a secret, and you know why? Because in the Chaldeans, in the Chaldini principles, scarcity is one of the like core things. If somebody knows that you've got 10 products and they're going to be gone by midnight, they're more motivated to buy. We know this.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm telling you a secret, I'm telling you something that only a few people in the world know. And who doesn't want to be part of that? I mean, who doesn't want to be part of that kind of elite stuff? So you can switch it round, use that pattern interrupt exactly like you're saying. You can go kind of, hardcore loud to break the pattern, or you can simply adjust your body, your physiology, your tonality, and move into that. And the key is to do it smoothly. Don't just like when we're chatting away, go, and Alex, because that's going to freak and weird people out. Okay, you need to do it. You need to do it gradually. Okay, you don't want to be a weirdo. Even if you're doing NLP and hypnosis, you don't have to be a handstand weirdo all the time. You can just sort of go. Use a little transition word. So, and pause. If you remember. Now you can do it. It's a little bit more natural because you've given a little bit of a pause. You've given them like they're kind of expecting something different. You've paused. You're not just going to rush into it. That's going to freak them out. That's going to be weird. And unfortunately, as we know, a lot of people who learn these things end up being real weirdos and annoying everyone because they don't understand that there's principles behind it. It's not the tools and reading stuff out in the script that works. It's the principle behind it. You're connecting with a human being. Treat them as a human being.
Yeah, it can be a fun game. That if you know there's an NLP training going on, look online, see when Bandler's doing his next one in London. If you happen to be in London, go and hang around the hotel, and wait for the end of the day or lunchtime when there's going to be normal customers there, and the people from the seminar are suddenly going to appear in the bar and stuff and play. Spot the NLP student, because they will be the ones that are doing the most inappropriate body language because they've missed the point entirely.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think that it sort of depends where you are in your kind of level of consciousness. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I had Paul McKenna was coming to Cardiff because I'd done training ages ago. They said, "Oh, look, Julie, they sent me a complimentary ticket," and I went along. And on one level, it's a good sort of lecture, solid lecture demo. It's exactly the same as he was doing, 20 years ago, but it's very solid. It's introduced one or two extra little things, but some very simple little kind of, they've stopped the tapping now, but taking a little voice from your head and moving it out.
It's doing the havening now, isn't it?
It's the havening. That's exactly it. It's the stroking. It's the stroking, and it's really interesting because actually, if you do NLP, you do hypnosis, you'll know, or at timeline, a lot of the time the initial interventions don't work. Now that's fine. It doesn't matter because you do it casually and you're testing. A little bit like with convincers. You try something out, just say, "Oh, look, we're going to do this," and then whatever happens, you say, "Oh, that's interesting," and usually it takes a little bit off. So he went through, did his thing, did the havening, no real change. I mean, he picked quite a challenging area, but then afterwards he did 3 integrations very quickly. So, the stress here, relaxation here, bring it together. And he did that 3 times very quickly, very easy, simple way to do. You have the problem here, the solution here. Just suggest, you've got your stress here about being able to solve this. You've got your relaxation here. In a moment, we're going to pull those together. As they come together, you're going to be focusing here. You're going to be thinking about it. You're going to see it come together. And as you do, you're feeling comfortable inside. You're feeling good. You feel totally in control. And even so, he still needed to do 3 of those in quick succession. To the audience, it looked like everything worked because, of course, that's the way when you're doing these things, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
But if you understand the principles behind it, you can see you got fail, 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 a little bit of success, a little bit of success, a bit more success. And as long as you maintain your composure, your equanimity, it doesn't matter. You see, the thing is, Jonathan, one of the reasons, and I've got a little confession to make, but I'll put it out there. I learned back in the day, I learned 2 inductions. In fact, well, they weren't really inductions anyway, if indeed an induction exists. But that's another kind of thing, all right? So I basically learned, I saw one hypnotist lift the hand up, do catalepsy, and then suggest it comes down. And then I did peripheral vision, look at a point, expand your vision out, and focus inside. And I've learned that from John and Judy, watching them in their trainings. I used to do all my sessions like that with clients. I would go through, do the NLP sort of stuff, and get them feeling good and all whooped up or happy, relaxed, calm, whatever they needed. And I'd usually do something called the 6-step reframe, which I loved, but very few hypnotists really sort of felt comfortable with. And then I would usually...
ironically, let me just jump in there. Remember where you are, what you used to do, but I've got to just jump in at 6 step. In fact, no, just let me write this note here. 6 step. We'll come back to it. Okay, sorry. Carry on with what you were.
Go for it, because the 6-step reframe and integration,
parts integration
of visual squash are really the two things that you want to, as a hypnotist, understand. If you understand the principles behind them, you can pretty much clear up anything that's...
Well, every man and his dog's jumped on the bandwagon. We've got, and I've done the stuff.
Yes.
You know, there's All Pain to Go.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Which ultimately is 6 step. It's
right.
ultimately parts integration.
Yeah.
But he likes to make out he's twisted it a little bit differently. No, he hasn't.
Yes.
And just because I can say it, if you go on my website, magicalguru.com, click on blog, and then search the blog for All Pain to Go, you'll see the truth behind the background of All Pain to Go and stuff. Anyway, and then you've got one of the former trainers for All Pain to Go, who's now doing rapid pain elimination therapy. I'm a hypnotic advisor to them. But at least Martin does openly admit it is, at its core, the 6-step reframe, parts integration therapy. In fact, there's a whole bunch of bloody drain that. There's so many different. Most of them are targeted to the pain niche, but then they are now rebranding them and teaching it for different things. I have complete unconscious reprogramming of emotional disease and distress, Cured, which is in the Bootcamp, which again, it's just the 6-step reframe.
Nice.
Which goes back to, well, obviously, it's in Frogs into Princes.
Yep.
Richard Bandler and John Grinder. There's a much nicer explanation, personally, I think, in Tad James's Hypnosis, a Comprehensive Guide.
Yep.
There's quite a good explanation in, I've forgotten the title of the book, which is ridiculous given that apparently I am the rogue hypnotist, or at least so many people say on the internet. But there's a good explanation in some of those books.
Well, let's
about your insights to 6-step reframe. I think it is a powerful. It's usable for everything.
Definitely. So I'll give a tiny bit of context. I'll talk about that, and then I'll talk about what's beyond that. Okay, because we must do it. So I was mentioning about inductions that I was doing. With the inductions, I had a couple of things, which was, first of all, I never tell anyone I'm doing I would never tell anyone I was doing an induction. I just say, oh, look, we've got a little experiment here. So setting that frame took any pressure off the client and off me. But what happened was I realized that I practiced these things so many hundreds of times with consistency, with a very consistent attitude, ritual, that I knew solidly where to go. So later on, when I learned all the fancy schmancy rapid inductions and all that kind of stuff, that I knew where I was going. Now, the thing about the 6-step reframe is, and I'm sorry, I made a little bit of a mistake early back in the day, because I didn't realize that you couldn't just go and see somebody do hypnosis, and that didn't mean you were competent or an expert. So when I made the mistake that when I observed people doing something, I thought, well, I can do this, and I went out and did it and started helping people out. And I've never had any doubt in my ability to do that. And yet, I call them the 20 deadly traps that seasoned hypnotists make that destroy their success rates, undermine their confidence and push down their inner success genie. I've seen that there's so few people, which is mind-boggling, so few people who have confidence in their abilities, even when they've had the proper training to be able to use it. And so I mentioned that kind of like a mistake, because I've realized later on that there's many things I can still learn. However, I've always had that belief. And the 6-step reframe was a good example of that. Grinder and Bandler have different sort of opinions on this. Bandler doesn't technically say that he likes it very much. Grinder, apparently the story is that he was ill once with the flu, went to bed, had a dream, woke up, had this, and for him it is the pattern of all the NLP patterns. And of course, really, I mean, they've seen other hypnotists do this as well. Erickson famously, used some versions of this. But I think maybe let's spend a minute and we can go through really the essence of what that is,
Yeah, please do.
just in case anyone doesn't know. And
Yeah.
the whole essence of it is this: if somebody has a problem, it's an emotion, it's a feeling ultimately inside them that is pulling their focus off course. And as hypnotists, we can help get that focus. And if we speak to them in the right way, we can find out behind that emotion, that feeling, what the secondary gain is, the so-called secondary gain. What's the purpose? What's the higher intention of that problem? So, like, simple example, and like in the moment example, you suddenly you go to cross the road, a bus comes along or some idiot comes close to you, nearly knocks you, and your adrenaline goes up, your heart jumps, and you jump out the way, and you're saved. The higher purpose of that in the moment adrenaline rush is to keep you safe and protect you.
Mm-hmm.
And behind that is another higher purpose: is once you're safe, oh, you can breathe that sigh of relief. And behind that sigh of relief is a sense of peace. And no matter what the problem, issue, feeling, whatever it is, if you stick with it long enough, you will get to some version of peace, calm, happiness, joy. And there's an intention behind that. Now, on occasion, you may want to have that insight consciously for the person you're there, and there's differing approaches on that. Some people want to get that conscious insight, some people want to suggest it happens later. There's pros and cons to all of those. There's no necessarily one right way to do it, but this is a very interesting way because you can set this up so that you get a genuine communication from the unconscious mind or the non-conscious. I probably differ in the way that I do that now, in that I wouldn't necessarily need to get the finger signals and stuff, but traditionally you'll use the finger signals. You may use ideomotor signals. You may use, for instance, you mentioned with some of the pain to go type stuff, or at least when I had that demoed on me, it was a great example of using the physical body for that. So I'm standing there, start swaying one way for a yes, right, body sway for a yes, body sway the other way for a no.
Or head nod, slight head movement.
Absolutely. Really simple. So you're starting off, okay, what's your problem
And
or
let's not
issue?
forget, let's just throw in there, because it's a similar thing in your motor response, although it's not
Yeah,
necessarily a six-step reframe, or
yes,
some elements might be. But Bob Burns has what he calls the swan.
yes,
And ultimately, that's you putting your elbow on a table or on the palm of your other hand and letting as your arm stuck up in the air, your hand leans over and it ends up looking a bit like a swan. What it
yes,
also looks like, though, is the position you'd end up in if you were holding a pendulum. And if you look
yes.
at all books on the pendulum,
Genius.
you look and it's the position your arm's in when you'd be holding the pendulum for doing ideomotor response. And I've looked at all books on the pendulum, and if you rub out the pendulum, what have you got left? Bob Burns' Swan,
Beautiful.
which I named Subconscious Wave Analytical Negation. Could I
Wow.
help him bring that product to market? Now he
Good job.
tells people that I didn't. That's why I published all the screenshots to prove he's a complete and utter liar who's posted defamatory nonsense about me. Just threw that in. It's got nothing to do really with, other than there isn't anything new. An ideomotor response is a very powerful thing, and
Definitely.
yeah,
Definitely. And I think you hit the nail on the head there. The with that, those kind of ideomotor response things, you can fit into a lot of different ways, either with hands, fingers, body sway, head nods. And once you get good, I think it's really good to start off with those because you build up confidence going through a particular routine. I would recommend probably starting off, a very simple way to do it is to use hand catalepsy and just suggest with finger movements, okay? And you can suggest it to a person. One finger on your left hand will move for a yes, one finger on your right hand will move for a no. And if they don't get that, then of course we step in as hypnotists and we'll move the finger for them and tell them that finger's going to move and we'll do that in the right way. You'll adjust your tone. You'll be slightly, you probably want to be slightly, you want to stay the authority figure, but obviously if they're quiet as a mouse, you only need to just tell them like this. And if they're a bit brash, you need to be a little bit more brash. Go 10-20% above them. Like the stuff with how you're supposed to dress, if you're training for corporate people, is dress just about 10%, better than them. But don't, keep it within a certain range. But later on, once you get your your skills and your instincts and your observation skills are sort of more refined, you can just do it more conversationally. And you can ask people, you can ask them stuff. You can get a baseline at the beginning of your conversation for a yes or a no, their unconscious yes or no. Just as much as you would do if you're doing some kind of mentalism, you'll get a baseline at the beginning, ask them some general questions in the chit chat that will elicit a yes and a no, so you can get a genuine response. Do they hesitate before they speak? Do they blink? Do they look a certain way? Does their body move? And you'll test that out. And then as you're going through that process, you can do it entirely conversationally without them even recognizing that you're doing it, and start to have those changes in there. So that's kind of like the more, should we say, more advanced side of it. You're still looking for stuff. It's just that you have set the context up earlier. Okay,
That
if they've got
sounds
some doubt.
borderline science fiction-y to anyone listening, a bit like, ooh, we're almost
Yes.
mind reading. Think about body language.
Yes. Yes.
Study body language. Robert Phipps, if you're in the boot camp, look at his training set on body language. He goes on about cues and signals, and it's about being able to use those as your arguably body language, the non-verbal communication that happens without people's conscious awareness.
Yes. You got it.
Is idiomotor responses. It's the same thing. It's a physical reaction that's occurring without conscious awareness. So, as Richard just said, if you become more aware of those things, you can use them as your cues.
Definitely. And there's an advantage to that, because you can combine them. So there's not like an exclusive thing. You could start off, and you can think through a few questions that might fit the context. You've come a long way here today, and you've had this problem for a while, and you really want to get this fixed. And you could have some things they'd like to just say no to, and you really like, like Alex, you're a big sports fan, aren't you? I mean, you're there every week on the terraces, to watch, So now I'm getting a sense of like where I'm going to go for my firm no, and I'm going to get a sense of that. I'm going to look at those things, and I'm going to look at the yes, like we've both got, you've got a daughter, I've got a son, and that's really important that we,
as they would call it in NLP, you're calibrating.
Absolutely.
And the reason I point that out is because NLP, one of its biggest faults, I personally think, is partly through to market things to make it look like people are going to learn something really magical or special so they can justify charging so much money, but also partly so it gives the people a sense of, oh, we're part of a special group that know all these fancy buzzwords and terms, we're better than you. They give it fancy terms. Calibration. Why don't they just say, calibration means finding out what their cues are for yes, which are for no, or which are for truth, which are for lies.
Definitely.
They give it fancy winky wanky names, don't they?
Exactly. And I think you're right. I mean, it's much more helpful to say paying attention to the other person. And as you say, notice, notice what's happening, basically. We're saying here, notice the qualities of yes, notice the qualities of no. And it's a really good thing that you can do for people, because the magic, if you will, is not the kind of like that some guru or whatever has the magic or that process. It's the fact that you are observing and you're paying attention and you're starting to notice that stuff. And if you look at someone like, for instance, Jordan Belfort's sales trainings, he very specifically, you're looking at the tonality cues. We know these kind of the famous bird whistle sort of studies. 7% of the communication is the words, 38% is the tonality, 55% is the body language, and obviously that was going to change quite a bit if you're on the phone. But you can notice these things, and when you're noticing tonality, you want to notice pauses. There will be certain things that are very unique to that person, and honestly, you don't need to be an advanced expert on this. If you pay attention, people will give it to you. It'll be on their plate. I mean, they'll be sort of shaking their heads as they're telling you something they're uncertain about.
Yeah.
And you can test it. You can test that again. You can get that response reliably, and it's a very nice way to do it unconsciously, just automatically more conversationally. So that if you do go to whether it's the hand signals or you're doing body sway or like the swan, like you say, and whether you're using a pendulum or you're getting them to imagine a pendulum, however you wish to do it. They have something set up, You've already run through that. You've tested it yourself. I mean, the only reason that I do convince us with people in a formal induction is to meet their expectations.
Yeah.
In a hypnosis session, you don't need to go down all of that. In fact, all the evidence shows that the induction is largely unnecessary. Most people coming to it and outside the field think that it's essential. It's generally not. At least in a therapeutic session. However, for me, its benefit is it's a really big, powerful convincer to the other person. If they see their finger together,
Oh, breaking up a bit. Please come back.
Stuck their head.
Broken up. I'm going to try ringing you back on the basis that I can always edit the audio together. So I'll ring you back. So there you go. These things happen, especially during the coronavirus of March 2020. Everyone on the internet, we lost you. But you were just telling us, you just explained, and we did get the explanation of how we can use silent, non-verbal communication, so-called body language, as the cues for truth or lies, fact, fiction, yes, no.
Yes.
As a kind of idiomotor response. And you were just then kind of going into giving an explanation for those who may not already know, who might not have read Frogs into Princes or the other books we mentioned, of roughly what happens with the 6-step reframe.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And the key thing here is to recognize that when you're working with somebody, they have a problem. The problem is a feeling or emotion, which will link in with their thoughts as well, but ultimately it's a feeling. It's a kind of something embodied in them. Behind that is a higher intentional purpose, and there are lots of ways in which you can work at where you can deal with that. I mean, you can go after feeling directly with anchoring and many other tools and techniques, or the havening, which is like quite an interesting. Give
yourself a nice warm hug.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Actually, when you're doing it, you look like you're in a straitjacket.
It's very relaxing, but it is a kind of a bit. It is it is a very interesting.
I interviewed a few weeks ago Stephen Travers, who
all right,
for a long time has been the island trainer for Havening, but he's just been made the head of European training.
Wow.
And I grilled him for over an hour about Havening, and if you go to hypnosisweek.com, you'll be able to find my interview with Stephen Travers.
Nice.
And whilst he wouldn't he would agree with me to a degree on my interpretation of Havening, but for obvious reasons he couldn't agree with me entirely. But I summed it up as just being an important seeming ritualistic process delivered with intent, with confidence, as you spoke about before. Something that seems so ridiculous, giving yourself a warm hug and rubbing your shoulders or whatever, that people have to rationalize it as this authority expert figure would only make me do something so daft if it had a real benefit. Yeah, there might be an element of, because your left hand goes on your right shoulder, your right hand goes on the left shoulder because they're crossed over as though you're hugging yourself, that you're confusing the left and right hemispheres of the brain and bringing hemisphere. Maybe, but I think it's more about the ritual, personally.
Sure. I would agree, and I can add a couple of little things to it because I think it's important. I think one, I mean, I had an experience once where I think when I did the first hypnosis training I was talking about, where I had a formative experience, somebody set up some 2 or 3, no, it was a chain of about 4 anchors on my arm. So like, nice feelings, slid their finger down. It was very, very profound. I kid you not, about 6 months later, I was on the tube and I was working as, when I first graduated, I thought, well, what do I do? And I was doing, whilst I was doing all these trainings at my day job, which was as a programmer and developer for NatWest and Royal Bank of Scotland. And I really hated it. But anyway, I was in there all squashed up against people. And somebody brushed next to me. And all of a sudden, I felt this like wave of euphoria and literally as though I've just been down and had a skinful at the pub. Quite amazing. And it was a very powerful experience for me. And so I think, it's in a lot of kids, a lot of us will have, when I was little, my mum used to sort of stroke my tummy in a circular direction. So it is conditioned in there to some degree, that whether it's just in my imagination or whatever. So there may be something like that for it.
But
you're
true.
right.
Yeah, I think you're right. There is that element of the comforting hug as a kid. Everything's going to
Yes.
be okay. And also, when you get hugged, there is proof that the body's more likely to release
Yeah.
oxytocin,
You got it.
the
You got
feel-good
it.
chemical.
You got it. Absolutely. And it's very interesting because it was very obvious to me now, with clearer eyes 20 years later, seeing, say, Paul McKenna do his demonstrations, that the famous person authority principle, he has that in his favor. So people are a little bit starstruck. They are expecting, they have heightened expectation already. And there are pros and cons to that. I think can be useful for getting people started on their journey, but past a certain point, if we do have time, is to look at some of the traps the hypnotists fall into.
Yeah.
Guru worship is a real thing that holds people back, because I want somebody to, if we as a coach or a hypnotist, whatever you want to call yourself, is helping somebody to make changes in their life. If you do what the traditional therapy model is, which is you're one up on the person that you're with, you're the psychoanalytical or the Freudian expert, dispassionate, sitting back there, looking down on the other person as being a bit weak and stuck in there, all their id and all this massive stuff going on. That doesn't really empower that person. So if you have a more co-equal thing where you're the kind of coach, that they have their skills in their life, they're the experts in their own life, but you're kind of helping clear the way for them to make the journey forward, then that's much more empowering. And I really want people to embody that attitude, that they can have these skills and be brilliant for themselves, because otherwise they've just got to be lower than anyone else and have the other person on the pedestal. And I know you feel very strongly about that as well. That's not an empowering
Well,
kind
I'm
of
midway. I agree with you largely, and then I disagree a little bit. But I think
Nice.
the middle ground might be I think the best example for listeners I can think of is, I never claim to stop anyone smoking.
Yes.
I never claim to
Yes.
stop anyone drinking alcohol. I never claim to stop anyone taking cocaine. It says on my website that I can help them change their life in this manner, but then when I actually speak to them when they're in the session, I tell them right at the start, bearing in mind they've already paid money up front, so they've already bought into it financially and psychologically. I say to them, look, John, if they're called John, I'm going to be honest with you straight up front. I have never stopped anyone smoking in my entire life.
Beautiful.
And for smoking, they obviously look at you like, what the hell are you on about? I go, no, seriously, it's true. I've never stopped anyone smoking, because the simple fact is, you went outside before when I told you to have your last ever cigarette, and you did. You went knowing it's your last ever cigarette. You bought that cigarette out yourself. I didn't help you put that cigarette out. You put it out yourself. You've thrown your rest of your cigarettes in that bin. You've thrown your lighter in that bin. You've done all that. I haven't. So you've stopped smoking. And you've done it yourself in the past. It's just that maybe a couple of days later you got a craving and another one. So you was a non-smoker for 2 days. So all I'm going to help you do today is I'm going to help you stretch that window from where you were able to take it yourself in the past.
Yes.
So that you don't have the cravings, or if you do, you can easily switch them off like that and stretch it so it becomes a week, a month, a year. It becomes the rest of your life as you want it to be right now.
Lovely.
So all I'm doing is helping you remain the confident, happy non-smoker that you've now become.
Perfect.
Obviously, contextually, whatever it is they're there for.
Yes, well, I love that, and I really love your that strong frame that you've set there with all those presuppositions and beautiful suggestions in there, because absolutely, we're saying to them.
Well, I've had some good teachers along the way.
Well, well, you've done a great. I mean, that's beautiful, and I really love that all of that in there, because there's a presupposition, there's an implication that they can do it. And when I say about guru worship, what I mean is this: if we're working with people, we need to have enough authority that they believe in us, so that we can help them believe in themselves. As a student of hypnosis, as a hypnotist yourself, you need to find some ways to build up belief over time. So the way I would put it, the middle ground, so to speak, is always be improving your skills. Always be drilling, pushing yourself, learning new things, be open, be willing to be challenged and challenge yourself, and trust as you develop those skills, all the stuff that you've learned. Trust your instincts, trust everything that you've learned, trust yourself. Because if you're going to be the person who's helping somebody else to trust that they can do it, you've got to have enough belief inside yourself. And I think you are a great role model for that, Alex. You know, you have that belief, even when 20, 30 years ago, very few people were confident to put their head above the parapet and talk about the placebo effect and its importance. You were able to do that, and I think that's a really cool thing, because it's a really important stage that people have inside their minds. By all means, respect, admire, model other people who are producing good stuff, but you got to have that belief inside yourself. You got to have that rock solid confidence with hypnosis that you can make a change, because otherwise, unconsciously, we talked about like the tonalities and body language. Unconsciously, when you're working with somebody, all you're going to be doing is installing uncertainty in them. Not that you want to, but you're going to be doing it by mistake. And so you've got to have that certainty inside yourself. It doesn't have to be a shouting rah rah kind of stuff, but it needs to be at least a quiet sense of certainty that you know what you're doing.
Yeah. Which, you know, because you just mentioned where people kind of go, I think that does segue nicely into the keyword. Oh, no, we'll come back to that. I've got the word traps down because you said we'll come to that at some point. But
Yes.
6-step reframe.
Yes.
Roughly, what are the 6 steps for people who might not know? Obviously, they can go and seek out the books or
Sure.
and stuff. But roughly, for listeners, do you want to just run through what they are? Yeah.
Sure. So, so basically, you're kind of having a chat with them. You'll then switch to saying that you're going to speak to their unconscious. You'll ask the unconscious mind, whatever. You may not use that word. You may use some symbol. You may use something else. You may just sort of just talk about the emotion, the feeling. You'll suggest that it has a higher intention. You'll ask what that higher intention is. You'll ask the unconscious mind if it would be willing to find at least 3, 4, 5 ways to satisfy that higher positive intention, but without having to do the old behavior. So you don't need to get rid of the old behavior, but you can, it's like broadening the range of options. It's like, so the intention behind smoking is to relax and let go. And when you relax and let go, you feel peace inside and you can breathe. I'd like your unconscious mind to search through all your history, all your experiences, all the good times in your life, all the times when you've been the best version of yourself, and find at least 5 or 6 ways in which you can achieve that higher positive intention, but without having to resort to that old behavior. Now, is your unconscious mind, if this is the yes signal, is your unconscious mind happy to do that? Is your unconscious mind happy to take full responsibility for implementing that and testing that over the coming days and weeks to make sure this is just right for you, your family, your friends, your life, that it works for you? And is there anything else your unconscious mind needs to be able to do this now effectively and look after you and make sure this is right for you? Fantastic. So, and then come back and some other suggestions around that. Now, Grinder does also at a certain point suggest that you ask for conscious insight about that. So you can do it a couple of ways. I've done it both. There's pros and cons to both. People may be very aware of what that higher intention is, or you can go through the whole process and just suggest that there is a higher intention, let the finger move it, go through that process, and once you get the ratification with the ideomotor signals, that the unconscious mind, so to speak, is on board, you can just kind of do that all unconsciously. Generally, it's probably useful for you, at least when you're starting off, to get some sense that the person has an experience of what the purpose of that is, so they can articulate it. It'll probably help them to have some buy-in. And it's exactly the same process. You know, I mentioned earlier that Grinder is a big fan of this, and so am I. Bandler will probably be more on the parts integration. It's exactly the same. It's just that you're talking about, you're saying on the one hand, I want to stop smoking, but on the other hand, I quite like it. With that, all you're doing is you're doing exactly the same model. Well, okay, the part of you that wants to stop, what will that do for you? Well, I'll feel relief. When you have relief, what will that do? Oh, I'll feel calm inside. Okay, great. And over here, it's like, I'm enjoying this habit. Well, when you enjoy that habit, what does it give you? Oh, it gives me relief or whatever, it gives me, and then when you have relief, you have what? Oh, well, you have calm. Now, can you see, and then you ask them, can you see consciously that what this one wants and what this one wants are exactly the same thing? Can you understand that consciously? Does that make perfect sense to you? Yes. Okay. And as your hands start to move together, those two parts start to integrate back into a new super part for you that can give you all the confidence you need, all the calm you need, all the relaxation. And as you bring that inside your body, etc., etc. And that's a really nice way to bring things together where people have made a bit of a change, but there's kind of some unconscious values conflict. It's a very, very reliable process. There's lots of opportunity there to give them positive suggestions. And of course, we know their hands are going to move together. Why? Because when they're there, if they don't immediately start moving, we're going to gently nudge them on the outside and model that for them. All right. And combine it with watching them and observing them. All right. I mean, I have to say, it's useful to do that only because I kind of want to move that process along. It will move eventually. Some people, it may take half an hour. All right. Generally, it will happen sort of quite quickly. But you can, if you guide that process gently.
If you're gonna put their hands out in front of them, and I'm trying to do this so that people at home might get to see. So I'm going to stand up because I'm trying to look at the little top corner so I know what I'm going to look like on that the video. So if you get the people to put their hands out straight in front of them,
yes,
it's going to take they could resist if they wanted to. It's going to take a while. Yes. If, however, you get them to put their hands out, you set out in front of them, but you take hold of their wrist and position them.
Yes.
So that they're slightly more, you see, they're not out in front like that, they're more angled.
Yes.
Perceptively, they are still out in front of them as they look at them, but you positioned them so that they're not out in front of them, they're more. Now, the difference is in this position, you can hold your hands in that position a hell of a lot longer than you can when they're at right angle, because at this angle, tendons on the arm tire out more and more rapidly. And as they do, either the hands are naturally going to move downwards because they get a sense of relief.
Nice.
In case as they move downwards, it gives naturally the hands will move inwards as well.
Beautiful.
Or they'll stay roughly where they are and move their hands will start to move inwards, because that also gives that feeling of relief here. And as they feel that sense of relief, it's like, well, that's nice. They'll carry on doing it because they become where it feels better.
Yes.
Consciously distracts them, and next thing they know, the hands are coming together, which must be in their minds because you suggested it would happen.
Nice, absolutely. And I think if you have it sort of slightly elevated in front, you can absolutely. It'll make a nice difference. And I think you want to. You'll find that after a while, you'll kind of move in that direction as well. When the hands are up here for a little while and they're holding it up, and as you're dealing with these parts, the hands will start to, and the arms will start to get heavy naturally. And you can use all of that, exactly as you say, tailor your suggestions. I noticed that you're it's just wonderful. I can see your fingers are twitching. It means your unconscious is really kind of like something's happening inside, isn't it? Something's getting ready to happen. And I think you can sense that. You can start to imply this stuff. This is where all those kind of, the idea of pacing and leading become really, really powerful. They're not just kind of like words that we're just throwing out there. There's a real purpose to that, which is observe what's happening, and whatever's happening is meant to happen, which means that it's beneficial for them. It's going to be beneficial for the person there, and it's a wonderful way to do that. So that's kind of the 6-step reframe. And as you say, it's been around a long time. And it's more about
the classical way, as I say. People look at Frogs into Princes, Richard Bandler, John Grinder, Hypnosis Comprehensive Guide by Tad James. I'll cut out the middleman. Forget the rogue hypnotist for now. Just sod it. Just type in Jonathan Royal into Amazon. Trust it. The books in my name are actually cheaper to buy because the bigger, the cheaper than the other brand, as it were. But these days, it's been kind of speeded up a bit. I mean, I'll give you an example. Pradeep Agarwal from India, who I interviewed on Hypnosis Week a few weeks ago, we talked about parts and 6-step reframe. Martin Rothery, obviously, who does rapid pain elimination therapy. We discussed it. It also came up in conversation with Roy Hunter, because obviously he does parts and what is effectively 6-step reframe. Now, there's loads of different ways of doing it, but I mean, it can be as simple. What are your thoughts on this? Because there is an argument that if you oversimplify things, you're not necessarily dealing with the root cause, whereas with parts, you are arguably doing. But it can be, as you sit there, okay, I'm talking directly to your unconscious mind now. I'd just like you to give me a sign or a signal that from here on in signifies yes, when you know for certain, with pure certainty within every fibre of your body, yes. So it might be a head movement, finger. We'll say it's a finger for the sake of it. So you know which is yes.
Yes.
And now give us one for no. Obviously, I'd use better terminology than this, but you've set up your yes and no.
Yes.
And then it's as simple as saying, okay, so you came here today. I'm talking directly to your unconscious mind, to John's unconscious mind. So hello, John's unconscious mind. John's conscious mind told me earlier today that he wants to remain a confident, happy, healthy, relaxed non-smoker. So what I'd like you to do, would it be possible for you today to help John, as I know is your aim in life at all times, to find ways, resources and reactions, thoughts and feelings, whatever triggers he needs and reactions he needs in any and all situations, to no longer need, want, crave or desire cigarettes or tobacco as he once did in the past, but rather to be able to continue moving forward as a confident, happy, healthy non-smoker that he's now become. Would that be appropriate? Could you help us in that way today? And hopefully you get a yes. If you get a no, then obviously you've got to drill down as to why.
Yes, got it.
Mediate, negotiate till you get a yes. But once you've got the yes, in that case, I'd like you to take a few moments. A few seconds for you unconscious mind is like many minutes or hours in the conscious world. So just take a few moments to delete, erase and remove positively and permanently any thoughts, feelings, emotions, triggers of any kind that may have once in the past held John back from continuing with his newfound abilities as the confident, happy, healthy, and relaxed non-smoker. And when you've been able to positively and permanently and safely delete, remove, and erase all of those thoughts, feelings, emotions, and triggers from the past, just give us that signal for yes. And then effectively, if you want to be totally safe, arguably at that point you can go, now, just to be sure, unconscious mind, could you ensure that if there's any need for any other abilities, thoughts or resources for John to draw upon in the future, so that he can confidently and happily say, no, thank you, I'm a non-smoker, and feel calm, relaxed and confident, and that sense of pride inside, can you just allow him access to all those things as and when he needs them as an automatic reflex action? Give us a yes. And then effectively reorientate them, whether you've used a formal trance or just close your eyes.
Yes.
And arguably that's kind of cut out a bit of the parts work.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can do it. Like I say earlier, I mean, it was interesting now that you can literally do it in a couple of sentences, even with the parts integration. Okay, I'm sensing that a part of you has some doubts about this, and a part of you wants to be really certain. Did I catch that right? Yes. Okay. Now I want you to focus on here just above your head, and as you do, those can come together. As they come together, you have certainty inside. You have certainty that you've overcome that doubt. You don't doubt that, do you, with that certainty inside? You can feel that inside now, can you not? That's great. So how are you doing? How are you doing, Bob? Well, I'm feeling pretty good. You're feeling pretty good. Is there anything else? You know what? I've got this wedding coming up and I've got to do a speech. That's right. How do you feel about it? I feel a bit nervous. That's great. So I usually got that nervous there in the hand, but then this rock solid, so that calmness, that certainty, you can do this here. And as you focus up here and you see those two, and as they bring them together, that's right. You're feeling that confidence inside. You're feeling that confidence inside now. How are you feeling, Bob? God, it's great. You know what? The only thing is, I really want to have a girlfriend, and I just feel this little bit of, sadness that I don't have anyone. That's right, Bob. And that sadness in that hand, but that all that happiness for the rest of your life is here. And Bob, as you focus on here, that comes together now, and you feel that happiness growing inside. That happiness is there for you. It's not that there's no sadness ever in your life. It's just that there's an overwhelming sense of happiness and optimism growing inside you, inside that confidence, beyond any of that old feeling you used to have before. So how are you doing now, Bob? God, I just feel phenomenal. How do you feel about going out and talking to girls now? Well, I feel great. How do you feel about the wedding? Awesome. And what have we done? We've done 3 parts integrations, and we've done them in 20 seconds each. And we've moved things on. How were we able to do that? We did it with certainty. We were able to have a fairly good mind read, checking in with the client what they needed, and we're able to integrate that. So you're absolutely right. And there's real beauty to working like this. I think it's nice to start off, learn the formal way, just so you have that experience. Yeah. But then over time, you'll see, what can I strip away? What needs to be there for this to succeed? And I can tell you, I'm getting to the place now where I just feel that the real thing that needs to be there is the hypnotic intent and real certainty in the person who's helping the other person, and absolute conviction that the other person can do it. And the stronger that gets, the more you can use the tools of your choice, if you will, to trigger that certainty in the other person. Does that make some kind of sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And especially, there's more and more courses popping up with fancy names. Oh, this new modality, this new modality.
Sure.
And my research shows me that, I'm sorry, but there is nothing new. There's new names. Mm-hmm. There's new orders to use techniques in. But the underlying techniques or reasons why the things work predate mesmerism. I mean, parts therapy, people go on, they might mention frogs and kittens. Obviously, it predates that. But if you actually look at other fields as well, the Native American Indians' belief system of shamanism, each member of the group played their own part.
Yes.
You had the Heyoka, who was like the court jester. You had the medicine man. And they all had different parts. But symbolically, they recognized that all of them had an element of that within them. They had an element of all those parts within them.
Yes.
But for the purposes of their rituals, one person would be designated as the medicine man, one as the Heyoka, one as the whatever. And the rituals were structured such that when you look at them, arguably they're doing a form of parts therapy.
Yes, I agree, absolutely. And this stuff goes way back to, even if you look at the roots of, say, you mentioned the shamans, if you look back to some of the Huna traditions in Hawaii, a lot of the stuff from timeline, whatever we want to call that is, goes by many names, and timeline therapy, were modelled from that. So you're right, the shaman's rattle, the shaman's trick is absolutely something that we are, the witch doctor, that is the kind of voodoo, that is really what we're doing. It's just that we're making it, we're contextualizing it in a socially appropriate way, in modern society, and we have a much clearer idea now. For hundreds of years there was a big debate about state and non-state theory, and you sort of, Mesmer and Esdale and Charcot on one side, and Braid and Bernheim and Coué on the other, and all this kind of lots of debates going on. And if you look at, I'm pretty sure now, given the reading between the lines of brain scans and neuroscience, that you're not going to find a particular one, shall we say, state. Although when you use shock and surprise, change track, and you can do that more overtly or more covertly, the amygdala gets triggered. Certain parts of the brain will light up, and we know at that point that people are very open to suggestion. When you have confusion, shock, surprise in life, it's why they've had these really weird phenomena that an airplane crashes into the water. Everyone's alive, but everyone's looking around, waiting for everyone else to make the first move, and they don't do that. Because no one does that, they all end up perishing.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Fight and freeze.
Freeze, exactly.
People forget the freeze often.
Absolutely, and it's really important that we understand this. So there are these things that are happening, and you're exactly right. The shaman's trick from all those ages ago are things that we are using now, and we can learn a lot from them. And I think that's really exciting, because it's. I always think I wouldn't call myself a stage hypnotist, but really when you're working with somebody, you are putting on a performance of sorts.
Yeah.
They need to know that you're delivering, and whether it's coaching or hypnosis, whatever you want to call it, they're the same processes. It's just you're going to call them something different. So for instance, in Israel, unless you are a licensed psychologist, you can't call it hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
You can there's still a bit of a debate about whether you can even call it creative visualization. So sometimes the licensed psychologists call it creative visualization, and everyone else just has to give it a different name. All right. There are some countries, I think Sweden, definitely Austria. I think there are certain countries where you will need to be a licensed medical professional to be able to call it technically hypnosis. And there are definitely organisations like the American Psychological Association that would really like to have full control over hypnosis, so they can dictate who's the expert, who isn't, what hypnosis is. And as you can imagine, you know, there's quite a strong feeling, I think, in the hypnosis community that would not be a very healthy thing, because it does,
All right.
for lots of ways.
This will be controversial. For a long time, I was of the belief that the British mainstream medical people wanted hypnosis to be really truly regulated, so that it was refined to just certain people. And I thought the same in many other places of the world. But you know what? I think the people on the front line in those areas, a lot of them do want that.
Yep.
But the actual powers that be that run it all, I don't think could care less. And the reason I say that is, I think they just want people to argue among themselves. It's never going to happen. It's never going to properly get regulated, because it's impossible to regulate anyway, because you could just call it a different name.
Yes.
Okay. So when you bear that in mind, it's something that's impossible to stop happening. It'll just be that they couldn't use a certain name.
You got it.
So why do they bother wasting the time letting these arguments go on? Because then people are arguing among themselves. And we've got to remember who runs the British mainstream medicine, ultimately. The government in England.
Sure.
In America, it's the same. It's governments. And governments dictate what people get taught in their conventional medical training at university, or what you get taught at schools. It's indoctrination. It's a brainwashing process. And the truth is, they want everyone to argue among themselves, and they want everyone's only perception of hypnosis to be cluck like a chicken, bark like a dog stage hypnotist, or for therapy, they're arguing amongst themselves. But that's good, because it gives the public something else to look at. They're arguing amongst themselves, a sense of confusion. Who do I go to?
Yes.
So that all this diverts from the fact that every day of our waking life, politicians trained in hypnotic techniques, language. Salespeople are.
Yes.
The education system is a brainwashing process. All of these things go up the tree, and you're going back to central governments. And the central governments all have a link to, certainly America does through the CIA, and England does through the British Psychological Society, which is also linked in with the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations, which used to be known as the Tavistock Hospital years ago, at the time that it was involved with the MK Ultra mind control studies that were happening in England as well as America.
Sure.
The truth is that they discovered, and this is interesting because you mentioned the amygdala, and that fear and shock and disorientation makes it. They discovered the most effective way to manipulate and control people is to put them into a sense of disorientation, confusion, and fear. Trauma-based mind control. And that's why everyone thought it was stage hypnosis and therapy that, as it's perceived now, because then no one's looking at the bigger picture of the fact they're getting manipulated from every area of life. It's happening right now, for example, through the media and stuff with the coronavirus.
Of course.
The biggest killer of coronavirus is going to be the fear instilled into people by the media, because that reduces people's immune system.
I got it. I mean, absolutely. I think that the biggest challenge, you hit the nail on the head there in so many really interesting areas, but I think with the coronavirus, It is the fear that people are having, and the mindset is going to be the most challenging thing. I've heard some shocking stories already about people doing ridiculous things, making really poor choices because they just don't think they can cope. And that fear is, the great thing about us is, as hypnotists, whatever we want to call ourselves, there's a couple of things. One, if we hold ourselves to a higher standard than anyone else can reasonably expect, we can do some really amazing stuff, because what we're doing is the flip side of that. We know that the cultural hypnosis in the newspapers in the UK, I mean, it's all around the world, but they're just so polarized in terms of the messages that they want, that they want, to get through. It doesn't matter whether you're a charity or whatever it is. If you've got a good sort of political lobby, if you've got your own PR department, you can get stories in the paper. And they're so lazy, journalists now, they will pretty much print anything. And this is very, very well known throughout the industry. And then like you say, it filters all the way around. So for us, it's why I kind of feel quite honoured to be sort of part of this profession. I feel really proud. I mean, I've worked with coaches, and a lot of people know me as a coach, but I'm proud to be a hypnotist because I know that people are much more capable of things than they think they are. It's just that they were never given a real chance to be able to see the world in a more accurate way, because the filters in their mind from a very early age, from suggestions from school, oftentimes from well-meaning people, from their society, tend, as a general rule of thumb, to limit them into certain sort of herd mindsets. There's exceptions to all of that, which is why having developing conscious awareness of your thoughts and feelings, and having a slightly more mindful way, not in a kind of sitting around just have to meditate and have incense, but just generally developing some self-awareness is just vital, because when you can do that, and I think that's part of the role that we have, is light bulbs go on for people if we do this right, and they realize, oh wow, I can do this, or I can see it differently, or you know what, I can actually achieve something I want, or I'm not a bad person because somebody else said, or I don't have to, just because everybody else loves football doesn't mean there's anything wrong with me if I don't go down that route. And people get really, you're right, there's a lot of fear, and at the moment there's more fear than I can imagine, I can remember in living memory, and a lot of people need that reassurance. And as hypnotists, we've got a wonderful opportunity now to step up, offer support to people, help them drain some of that support away. We don't have to say, we can't promise what the future is going to be, we can't promise how long things are going to be, but we can teach people easily, even a basic simple induction, an online group thing that you do. They call it meditation if you want to cover yourself, it doesn't matter, but we have the ability to help people move outside of that. Not every person is going to want to see the full level of the sort of media involvement and so forth, and the way things are going in those systems. For some people, it's just, they're not going to go down that route. But you can at least help them to feel a bit better about themselves, so they don't feel stuck in that. Because you're right, there's the dark side of hypnosis, there's the positive side, and the reality is, whatever you want to call it, every politician has learned to, these days is trained in these body language techniques and unconscious influence and using their tonality, their body language and everything else. They're trained in this. The top politicians are trained, media clergy, we know pastors in America, the people who get you to send all that money. I mean, they are super trained in that, and they're super trained in marketing. I was watching reading about some fascinating. I mean, there's some guys in America. I mean, they literally send these letters out. I'm trying to remember the guy who was talking about which show it was. But anyway, they send these letters out, and people are in essence paying to get the grace of God. And what they do is they follow up with these lists of letters over a period of time.
Well, I don't know if Benny Hinn does that. He does.
He's one of them. Yeah, he's one of the guys. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, it was quite amazing. But once people have a belief, you can build on that. And then there's, as we say, there's the dark side, and then there's the side where you really want to help people out. And actually, one of the reasons I love working with hypnotists and coaches now is I know they've got, as long as people have got the right attitude, they want to help people in the right place, they're willing to really work hard for their clients, then I help them develop that attitude, build the confidence inside, develop their skills, their competence, their confidence, get that all lined up, their mindset, their attitude, so that they can do that. Because the world needs people who can genuinely help other people to break free from those limitations inside. Not everyone, there's the saying is that you can't take a horse to water. Not everyone's going to want that, but those people who are there want to make that change, then we're in a unique position to do that. And you're right. And other people may not realise that this is already being used throughout the world, and it's just that we're in a position to do that benevolently. And what I find really reassuring now is I've got friends in the US who are doctors, nurses, teachers, people who are using hypnosis in their day-to-day life to really help people. They understand, if they're a doctor working in emergency care, that they're in a unique position when somebody comes in to start giving them suggestions. Look up here, you're going to be okay, you're going to be fine, don't worry, we're going to take care of this. All right, just focus on your breathing, we've got this in hand, you're going to be okay, you're fine, you're in the right place. They know that they're in a unique position as the authority figure to do that. They know that the thing not to do is to look at somebody who comes in and go, you know what, it's not looking so good here, I'm going to see what I can do. All right, that's not the way to go. So they understand that, and so it's very encouraging that there are good people in the world doing that, and then there are the other people who want to take advantage, and you just have to have your chops about you. But for us, the good side, the light side of hypnosis is something very powerful, and we've got a lot to offer.
I have 3 more major points noted here. That's including the reminders. So, because I'm leading up to asking you about the most recent book, but we'll do that right at the end.
Cool.
So in order, because we mentioned the shamans, we mentioned Native American Indian shamanism and all this, that, the other before. They used a lot of symbolism. And images get used in advertising, in the media, in the news as well. Even right now, the images, they're saying one thing, so they're consciously fixating your attention through what they're saying, but there can be images flashing up on the screen or symbols that have got an unconscious meaning already that can be triggering off. What they're saying could be calm and relaxed, but they could put up a warning sign, danger, that's going to trigger off negative things. Symbolism can be used positively and negatively. One of the bullet points I've got here is that you're going to tell us a little bit about your work with generative change and symbolism. So nice. It's a segue point now for that.
Cool. Excellent. So I kind of see this. So if you look at hypnosis and kind of sort of things, and I'm not going to hit everything here, but just like the brief evolution, when you go right back, you've got all the shamanistic stuff and meditation traditions go back hundreds, thousands of years, with the kind of the state stuff with Mesmer and stuff we mentioned, and the non-state with Braid, Bernheim, Coué. You've got the evolution more into the academic side with Clark Hull, the socio-cognitive perspective, and Sabin and all these kind of people. You've got Ellman with this kind of like pretend frame. You've got Erickson's work with sort of priming and metaphor. You've got NLP evolving. You've got all the kind of understanding of the placebo effect and Kirsch, the neuroscience revolution. You've got things like, street hypnosis. You've got more kind of like conversational techniques. But symbolism is something that I think is undergoing a bit of a renaissance now. And I'll tell you why. I mean, that's exactly, you're right. If you go way back, those images, symbols, metaphors, stories have been used for centuries. It was those. It's how we,
especially in religion.
And Jacob, the other day, we went out running together. So my son is 9. We're out running, and he started telling me about Romulus and Remus and the story of how Rome was. And he'd read it in the book, and it was very interesting. The stories there, it's like one of those classic sort of almost like a classic fairy tale. It's very dark. But those classic fairy tales with their darkness teach us certain things about human nature, to be careful, to learn that life's going to have these obstacles, these challenges, these blocks, but we can get over them. And so that symbolism is a very, very rich pedigree. And you're exactly right. It can be used on the dark side, can be used for manipulation. On the light side, it can be used to help other people. Now, what's beautiful about working with symbolism is that once you get used to it, you can really help people make some very, very fast changes, but without any conscious interference. I mean, they won't even know consciously. They get such imaginal absorption You know, their mind gets so absorbed in it that they can start to move in that direction. So I'll talk about that a little bit in a moment. But when we say generative change as opposed to remedial change, what all that means is now when I work with smokers, I kind of, for instance, you know, if people want to stop smoking, most of the people I'm working with are sort of hypnotists and coaches, but the clients who come to me, whether it's, you know, typically now be generalized anxiety, fear of flying, you know, public speaking, but, you know, smokers, I'm more than happy to help out. We can do a session to focus on the remedial side, which means we could help them to stop. We've got hundreds of ways between us. We could do that, literally hundreds. You know, we can develop hundreds more. You know, you can make them think of something revolting, something they hate, you know, burnt hair, you know, the smell of something revolting, and think about cigarettes. You can break the trigger like that. So that's one way. You've got the remedial side, which you can do. You can start to make it a little bit more generative with the 6-step reframe, i.e. they have new behaviors, new ideas, new thoughts. Or you can go the whole hog, and when they, because this is what I've noticed over the last 20 years working, for instance, with smokers, is it's not just about stopping smoking. It becomes a very powerful symbol. There's that word again. It becomes a very powerful symbol for confidence, being free of something, being able to do something that they didn't think they can do. Well, now they've got this new part inside themselves. What if you took that part and evolved it into something even bigger, and they were able to apply it to all the other areas of their lives, their future dreams? And then what if you were able to evolve that further and take that back to all the times in the past when they would have liked to have had that, so it becomes a real identity level change? And what if you were to help them to keep evolving that so that it got richer and richer at a very deep level? So that's what I mean by kind of the generative stuff. So you can have the kind of the core level change, you can have like a bit of a change where they can take it and start to evolve it forwards. And it's a really nice way of thinking about things. Now, of course, not everyone's going to want, you know, it's kind of like traveling first class. Not everyone's going to want to do that on the plane. I mean, I would love to. I've been lucky in my life twice because my dad saved up points when I was a kid. I got to travel first class on Lufthansa. I got to travel first class on Swiss Air. In fact, actually, one time I was able to, a couple of years ago, to travel business class, and it's amazing. So some people want that, okay, because the challenge is you can help people to stop smoking, but when really the shit hits the fan, you know, a bereavement, a relationship breakdown, you know, a job loss, you know, massive stress, their unconscious mind is going to search through for something, an anchor point, something inside them that is rock solid that they can rely on. And occasionally, not often, but occasionally people will kind of revert back to some of their old behaviors. That's why sometimes these things, it seems fine for several years, but then something really left field, tough happens to that person and they go there. So the generative side is about is working with people over a longer period of time. It's kind of like you're looking after your clients, you're evolving new programs for them, but you're keeping on evolving those resources for them so that they go from confidence to strength to taking that and applying it to other areas of their life. It's, should we say, an optional kind of thing. It's not, the remedial side is really the core. That's what we want to make the changes. But some people still want to go and take that, and it depends on how much as a person you want to evolve. Does that distinction make sense?
Yeah. What does jump into my mind is, because we were saying about symbolism.
Yes.
Symbolism, I mean, it's like logos, a company logo.
Yes.
To some, they see it and it can mean trust because they value that brand.
Yes.
To others, they might see it, and to them, it triggers off distrust because they had a bad experience with that brand, for example. But it's generally accepted associations or anchored conditioned thoughts, feelings, or emotions to an image. It's pretty much symbolism, as I would explain it, which is not too dissimilar from, which definitely is becoming kind of more used again now, especially with the work of people like Andrew Austin. His metaphors of movement and stuff is metaphor.
Yes.
Because when you say, you know, for example, imagine it's almost as if, I'm trying to think of a metaphor. It's almost as though It's the straw that broke the camel's back.
You got it. You got it.
Right. People generally accept that saying, that metaphor of meaning it's that final little tiny thing after loads of tiny things that's come to breaking point.
Yes.
But visually, that could be, I don't know, like an image of if you had a photograph of somebody there who's clearly crying and they're looking like pulling their hair out or crying
Yes.
like, eh,
Yes.
and ask people what did it mean to them, the visual image.
Yes.
Probably say, well, that's someone who's been pushed too far.
Yes. Yes.
It's similar outcome, different way of getting there.
Definitely. So I'll lead into that because I think you're headed absolutely in the right direction there. You've got, shall we say, we've got kind of the metaphors maybe that are sort of dead metaphors that people have said so often that they don't even realise that they are metaphors. You know, like, oh, we're at a crossroads. You know, it's a classic example. Well, the academic research over the last decade, actually a bit more, has even in that they've realised that we have something called embodied cognition. Our understanding of ourselves and what we're capable of is always in relation to the environment, and primarily we understand our environment in terms of metaphor. So, for example, when we're little, the adults are taller, and they know more. So therefore, up is higher, up is better. So you go up the ladder in life. You know, you look up to someone. All right. So all these metaphors develop in life out of our real, genuine experience of the environment, and they're embodied, i.e., they describe our relationship physically, our orientation to the environment that we're in. And yet people are largely unconscious of this, which is why the space around them, and you're exactly right, those metaphors are absolutely so powerful. And the trick is to realize that you and I can be looking at the same thing and we'll have very different associations of it. And one of the challenges, I mean, I'll give you a classic example. This is from Jerry Kine, you know, God bless him. You know, years ago, he used to talk about that he was doing a visualization one day and this person went into an abreaction. And it was totally surprising because he was saying, oh, you're on a beach, you're walking along and the sun's coming down. Well, why did that person have an abreaction? Well, it turned out that for that person on their wedding day, they're on a beach, there's a bloody tsunami, freak thing with the waves, straight out to sea, and that person's locked it inside themselves, you know, too traumatic. You know, the wedding day, never saw their partner again, you know. It's not a great story, but the thing is, it's a really important story for us as hypnotists to realise that our symbols and our associations...
the same as others. Yeah.
Yes, they're not the
That's
same.
why I always use that phrase. It's almost as if, because then if you say it's almost as if you're on a beach,
yes,
in a way that feels right for you,
got it.
Well, almost as if implies they can think of something entirely different.
Yes,
and that's compounded by the in a way that feels right for you. So you're more likely to avoid the abreactions then.
Definitely. Well, look, you're exactly right. And shall we show you? Like, shall I show you a quick, just a quick example of a way that we can do this without sort of, you know, putting my fish in your dreams. So, Jonathan, what's something that you'd like more of in your life, or to feel more, or experience more? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Oh, it depends how deep down we dig. I suppose if I had to give it a word, I would say freedom.
Freedom, okay. And freedom. And that's freedom like what?
Everything it encompasses. My definition of freedom is to be able to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, where you want, whenever you want, without having to worry on any level whatsoever about money, scheduling, that's my kind of
beautiful
freedom, and to a degree, I'm fortunate to have a lot of that in my life. But if I'm honestly saying what would I want more of, it'd be more freedom on a greater level in all.
Nice. And when all that freedom on a greater level, And all of that could be a little bit like what?
Like what? I'm going to go with this because I know I definitely shouldn't be overthinking it. And if I had a client, I'd be saying to them, don't overthink it. So the first thing that jumped into my head, it'd be a bit like having a magic wand.
Yes. Now, let me ask you this. And magic wand.
Mm.
And what kind of wand is a magic wand like that?
Yeah, well, one that works. So it's powerful.
And works and powerful. And when works and powerful and freedom, what could a wand like this want to have happen?
Very good. Anyone watching this, as long as we get the actual visuals, not acting, it's just realization that that's worked. Right, okay. What entered my head was the truth,
And truth.
the truth to come out, which means I need to get justice finally.
And truth and justice and freedom. And when all of that, when truth and justice and freedom, when all of that, then what happens?
Oh, then everyone knows the truth of what I tried to make everyone aware of over 20 years ago now.
And everyone knows. And when all of that and everyone knows, what happens next?
I don't care what anyone thinks anymore then, because if they choose to ignore the truth, fine. People can do that, but then if they post defamatory nonsense, well, then it is totally clearly defamatory nonsense done vindictively or because they're unbalanced or whatever, opposed to that tiny little potential fly in the ointment at the minute that maybe, just maybe,
Yes.
they genuinely believe the defamatory nonsense, despite the fact that there's evidence galore out there that what they're believing isn't true. Still turn around and go, oh, well, if that's the case, why have you got this criminal conviction?
Got it. So when don't care what other people think and no more fly in ointment and everyone knows and truth and justice and freedom, when all of that, then what happens?
Don't have anything to prove anymore. In a good way. and I just entered my head, but could have said about Magic Wand before it becomes more powerful.
Mm. Mm. And wand more powerful.
Mm.
And when wand is more powerful, like this, how do you feel inside now?
Right now, completely just, well, yeah, especially now that I've just done that with my shoulders. Chilled out, relaxed. Yeah, just, yeah, chilled.
And chilled. And whereabouts in your body do you feel chilled when chilled like this?
I think honestly, right now, I'm not sure I could say any one place more than other. I think it's just a sense of kind of calmness, chilledness,
And
oneness.
calmness. Yeah, nice. Good job. Calmness and chilledness. Nice. And so we've just gone through a very little kind of part of that process just to get a sense of the symbol and metaphor. Oh, and by the way, going through that, what do you know now that you didn't know before, just having gone through that little process, Alex?
Ooh, you're good. I know that to some degree, and I'm only prepared to accept or say to some degree because I genuinely still believe that it's the major fly in the ointment, so to speak. But to some degree, at some point, I have probably in the past held myself back from doing certain things as a sort of self-protection factor of what's the point, because if I do that, all that's going to happen is at some point down the line, people are going to pull out the news of the world nonsense. For anyone listening who doesn't know what that is, just go to circusofthemind.net. I'll put a link below us. Without them having the full facts.
Yes.
But twisted, because the thing is, in the past several years, I've got more evidence in my favour to prove that things were never as that ridiculous disgrace newspaper made them out to be. But I have had it in the past where certain things I've done, and I've done them to a level of certain success, far exceeding that maybe should have happened for the young age I was at the time. And then some bastard or bitch, excuse the language, has come along and started posting around perceptively true stuff, because after all, if a newspaper prints it, it must be true. After all, if down the line you then got a criminal conviction, it must be true. If that was the case, there wouldn't be gross miscarriages of justice where years afterwards people get the convictions overturned. If that was the case, Mazza Mahmood, the fake-shaped Murdoch's journalist, wouldn't have ended up jailed for conspiracy to avert the course of justice. And he's the thing that's held back my career. So I get perceived as quite successful, and arguably I am incredibly successful, but
Yes.
It's only scraping the surface of what it could have been if the truth had been found 20 years ago, which is in the process of being, because my appeal's in with the Court of Appeal.
Nice.
I now have evidence that proves that the Royal Mint were never sent these counterfeit coins, despite the fact the CPS saying they were, which means there's no evidence. So it should never have gone to court in the first place.
Great. And knowing all that now, what difference does that make for you?
Once the conviction's overturned,
Mm.
and I say not if, I say once it is,
Mm.
because there's numerous other routes I can go down. If for some bizarre reason this current renewed appeal didn't get it overturned, I can appeal again when new evidence comes to light. And I know for a
Nice.
fact there's new evidence going to be released
Nice.
later in the year. I can't say too much about that because the contempt of court and it's other court cases going on. But when it comes to the logical conclusion, it won't. The feeling I'm getting around, it won't bother me if people
Yes.
rubbish, nonsense,
yes.
because there'll be undeniable proof there that it's rubbish and nonsense.
Got it.
It's less likely to have a detrimental effect on career progression.
Yes.
Other than with any Rupert Murdoch or media, obviously, but that has to be accepted after that. He'll be getting sued massively.
Got it. And let me ask, I've just got one more question just for this one. What difference, when all of that, what difference does that make for you?
Oh. The word that jumps into my head is choice.
Choice. Nice.
Because there's some things that I know right at this moment would just not be available to me as choices on any level of possibility. There are certain places in the world that would not let you in with the criminal conviction.
Sure.
For example. But the moment that is overturned, I would have the choice to go to those places if I wanted to. I'm not saying I want to go, but I have the choice.
Nice.
So, yeah, choice.
Yeah. Beautiful. Good job. Well, thank you so much for going through and just willing to explore a little sense of the symbol and so forth. And you know, feel free to speak to it as you will. But the cool thing here is that
that's profound. I mean, for people at home, I don't want any acting. If I was thinking it was shite and doing that, I would have said something earlier. There is a profoundness to how suddenly certain things jumped up through other things just being repeated back, and it's profound.
Nice. And I really and the thing is, what's really nice about having this as like a kind of a sort of a way to work, and you can fit it in your other stuff that you're doing, is if I tried to give you a symbol or a metaphor, there's no way it would be the right one for you. But when that comes from you, and it comes up, and we know it's unconscious because you aren't expecting it, and you're right, you can, as a hypnotist, you can encourage somebody with that. You know, it's just, that could be a bit like what? You have your wand, and it starts to evolve and grow. Now you've got something powerful, like, it's your own internal power symbol, and it knows how to evolve. If we map that back, I don't want to map it necessarily exactly back, but if you think about the six-step reframe, we say, you've got this feeling inside. Well, as hypnotists, we're working either with feelings or symbols, and we're saying, that's right. And by the way, it's gonna keep growing. It's gonna keep growing.
I've just had a sense of realization that because I didn't know exactly what you were going to do. But now that I'm just kind of running through my head, we mentioned earlier on about the Native American Indians.
Yes.
And shamanism. And one of the rituals they have, people can search this on Google, is to find your own power animal.
Nice. You got it.
And that meditation you're not told what animal you're going to be, but you beforehand consciously you see visual representations of all the godlike animals, the bear and they're all of them. You've got like plastic ones in this day and age, so you see them. So there's a suggestion there, I suppose. But then you go through this arguably content-free meditation, ritual, trance, call it what you will, and you come out at the end and you suddenly realize that for whatever reason, confronted by a certain thing, when you finally get to this stream, or what, it depends which version of it you've gone through, you end up looking down and you see a reflection of what animal you are, and this is to give you your power animal symbol.
Yes.
Hell of a lot of similarities. I've just realised it's bizarre that we were talking about that before.
Definitely. And you're exactly right. This is a way to bring this kind of experience in and help people to find their own certainty, their own inner guidance, and kind of bypass the limitations of their critical faculty, their mind, their thinking. What's nice about working this way is that you can help people continue to evolve that way past what they even ever believed could have been possible, beyond any even if they read all the books and have set exciting goals, they're still limited by their conscious mind. And even when you're working with a 6-step reframe, you still got, unless you set the context up right, you've still got a lot of variability in terms of people trying to have performance anxiety or whatever. If you approach it in the right way with symbolism, and it's still got there's still lots of different parts to that to making that happen right, but it's a beautiful way because they're in essence going to find what the symbol wants for them. The symbol wants something. It's like in the 6-step reframe, we're going after the emotion directly and saying, well, what does your unconscious mind have as a higher purpose of that? With the symbolism, we're letting that evolve, and it's going down and evolving as a symbol. And later on, you have the conscious insight about the fact that I recognize something's different, something, and you might want to speak to this, but that something's changing inside. I can feel it. My perception's changing. I don't really know quite how this is happening. I don't know why that symbol came up, and I don't know why. And that, of course, is perfect for us as hypnotists, because that's exactly the experience we want our clients and subjects to have. We want them, insofar as hypnosis is real, we want them to have an experience where they can tap into the hidden powers that we always hear about in the subconscious, but we want them to do that in a way with the minimum amount of conscious interference. We're not triggering the law of reversed effort. We want it to be in a way that we can not trigger the law of dominant effect. We want to be able to help them with that. So we're using fundamentally here the law of association with metaphor, which is really what metaphor does, exactly like you said. And bearing in mind that if I start to try and give you my metaphors and symbols, the symbols being, should we say, the component parts of the overall bigger metaphor, there's a relationship between them. If I start just telling you them right off the bat, I'm going to miss the mark, because you may not like football, you may not like beaches, I don't know. But when it comes up spontaneously, you capture that moment and you roll with it. You have something very unique that you can offer your clients.
And it is for people watching, listening. Hopefully, we'll have video. Genuinely, you do feel like something's happening almost, or has just happened. Certainly, when I suddenly went, for whatever bloody reason, magic wand, for whatever.
Yes.
Okay. There's definite sensation of feeling that.
Nice.
That's powerful.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Now, this is obviously something that you moved into, which we're going along here. I've got 2 notes left on here.
Cool.
The last one is we're going to come to your book and how people can contact you and all that. But you said before the end to remind you to mention the word traps, in terms of traps that therapy. You said there's like
yes,
traps, people falling.
Absolutely. So it's just really a way that I want, when I work with hypnotists now, and I work with them usually in coaches over a period of time, it's to help them develop that kind of rock solid integrated confidence in terms of being able to use hypnosis. There's lots of techniques, lots of great approaches out there, but you fundamentally got to develop your rituals inside your mind in terms of the way that you behave, so that you identify any weaknesses inside yourself in the way that you come across, in the way that you use your voice, in the way that you're doing stuff, in your mindset, particularly your mindset and attitudes that you might not be aware of, but somebody who's been there and works in that field can actually help you identify and overcome, and help you then, having overcome that, develop those that confidence inside, and then throw in all this stuff, not just that remedial stuff, but the generative stuff where they can start to experience that in their life. They have their own magic wand, the confidence, the power, the freedom, because otherwise it's an unjust life. I think if you live your life feeling trapped and frightened, and particularly, and if that's because of a poor attitude, or just simply don't even have the self-awareness of it, it's a real shame. People are capable of pretty amazing things, and so these traps are just the things that I've noticed in people who are, shall we say, they've either starting off on their journey, or more usually they've done lots of stuff, but they're still not using it. They want to use it, but they're not using it, or they're not using their coaching or hypnosis as much as they want, and they don't really understand why. So I'll whiz through these, see which ones make sense to you, which ones you agree with. One is the next shiny thing. So that's a kind of like, basically, yeah, I think you know where I'm going with that. The second one will be the I will study with you and I know better. Well, that kind of speaks to itself. You gotta, you're an expert on yourself, but if you are going to learn the next shiny thing, then that's not the attitude you really want to bring to it. A sinking feeling that you're feeling more and more behind. So literally what happens is people are now getting the next course and they've got their last 20 ones and they just feel swamped because they don't understand the principles and they haven't embodied them. They've got a lot of people either feel that they need to have the I am an expert meme, which is basically they need to try and present themselves as an expert, but there's such cognitive dissonance there that they just basically, it just freaks out their unconscious mind. There's guru love. We've talked about that. Respect people, appreciate them, learn from them. I'm all in favour of that. But if you have somebody on the pedestal, that's doing you no favours, doesn't do any favour in any of your relationships. The if only I learn one more thing trap. If only I learn one more thing, I'm going to be an expert. I can do this. There's the relationship between research and practical application, and the paradox of a novice achieving mastery. And by that, I mean that it's good to know stuff, it's good to learn it, it's good to have an awareness of it, but none of those in themselves are going to give you mastery. You're only going to have that through experience and through drilling and having the right guidance and the right information, so you build confidence and competence. What I call mapless madness, so where you have people not having any kind of place to go. That old saying that if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. But then you need to have that map, and it needs to be your attitudes, your thoughts, your behaviors, the rituals before you see your client, the rituals when you see them, your follow-up afterwards. Because if you do your job right and you really take care of someone, you can have that relationship for life. And that's really my aim when I'm working with people. There's the principle of unconscious damage. So if you don't understand the power of your words, you are already a hypnotist, and you're hypnotizing. You are giving suggestions the whole time. So you've got to develop a super awareness of that, how you're using that inside your own mind to talk to yourself, but also to other people, so you can then clear up the gaps, maximize and take the good parts of that and spread it out. There's your personality type and understanding that, and there's weaknesses and strengths and working with that. There's your learning strategy and attitude. There's a feeling of less than. There's a feeling of being more than. So if you feel you're less than everyone else, well, that's going to hold you back. But if you feel you're better and above everyone else, that's also going to help you back. You need to kind of move towards the middle. There's the principle of plugging your gaps. If you don't know the gaps to plug, how are you going to plug them? There's the I must protect everyone meme, where you have some people out there who just feel that they've got to bring that to everything they're doing. They've got to be the permanent counsellor. And of course, basically there you're giving a non-verbal suggestion to everyone that the world is scary, that they're weak, that they're powerless. It's not helping anyone. There's the law of reversed effort. It's great to have a massive desire to be better and help other people, but you can easily be freaking yourself out the whole time consciously by the way you're approaching it, which it's just, you got to nail that. There's the eternal good student trap, which is like, it's kind of like being the good girl or the good boy, but it's kind of like evolving into later life that I've got to just be a good student. No, we want you to take this, apply it, and use it in your life. And there's the conscious mind can be the enemy of success, and your unconscious mind can be a friend. In fact, they can both. Really, you want to make friends with both. You want to make friends with all of you, but it's just kind of understanding that, because a lot of people end up having. They want to trust hypnosis. They want to trust the unconscious, but they don't know how. And then they just get stuck in their conscious mind thinking about things, and they just basically get stuck there. So these are like traps. They're all flavors of basically one thing, which is a hypnotist or coach needs to develop certainty inside themselves, rock solid certainty that these processes will work and change other people's lives, that you're adding value to other people by charging or offering your service, and also that you're using this in your life anyway. And the only way you're going to get this, you've got to be able to be congruent with that, internalize it yourself, experience it for yourself, see how you can adjust your own mindset, your own attitudes, your own thoughts, behaviors, feelings, actions, so you're really there. And I guess if we want to go into like other areas as well, it's kind of what they really say when people talk about the law of attraction. You've got to have your mind, your thoughts, your feelings aligned with that. This is contextualizing it in that line so that you are other people. You now model and mirror for other people what they want. You know, Gandhi had this wonderful saying, it's a lovely story, you know, be the change you want to see in the world. Don't go and try and get everyone else to change yourself. Sort that out. Once you're there in that place, you're going to be much more likely to be able to help other people out.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Richard. Look, I've got one more thing here, and then we'll wrap this up, because this will be currently the record holder for the last week interview. Going to edit that other bit on. This will be about 1 hour and 50 odd minutes. So congratulations. So far, you win the award.
Record breaker.
Pure content. Thank you for that. For people who are watching, listening, as the case may be, as I said before, right at the end, well, below this video, you'll see Richard's website, richardhaggerty.co.uk, which you can click on to contact him, ask him questions, find out about perhaps doing his NLP practitioner or master practitioner or trainer if you want to become a trainer of NLP, or all three of them. Or perhaps you like coaching in one or more of the areas that Richard has spoken about, because he does do peak performance coaching, success coaching for people in our industry as well as people outside of it. So, you know, you may want to contact him about stuff like that. If you want to dip your toe in the water, so to speak, if you're already one of my bootcamp members, do yourself a favor. If you've not looked at it already, go into bootcamp, look at the bit that says 28 days to hypnosis success, Richard Haggerty, rapid instant change hypnosis. And most of the videos are roughly about an hour long. So you're on lockdown, certainly for the next, because this is going to go up today, the 25th of March, 2020. For the next 3 weeks in England, you're on lockdown. And in many other countries, that's the case as well. And it'll probably go a bit further. So the chances are, if you just watch one video a day for the next 4 weeks while you're on lockdown, it will kill just over an hour of the time you've got that you're at home that you weren't before, but in a positive, constructive way where you'll be learning and expanding as a therapist. And you'll just see the genius of how Richard's taken the stuff that's in my boot camp, not just from me, but from 15 other world-class experts, and he's taken it all and he goes, look at this, here's another way of looking at this is how you can use this. Practical applications. Those of you who are in the boot camp who you've learned a lot, yeah, but study the 28 days to hypnosis success thing, and at the end of it, you'll realise, I know this is a wanky saying, but it's true in this context. They say in NLP, and it makes me cringe when they say it, but here, I actually truly mean it, is that when you've done the 28 days to hypnosis success, you'll realise you've actually learnt more from the boot camp than you consciously realised you'd learnt previously. That sounds so winky wanky, but it's true, as you will see. And if you're not in the boot camp, contact me. But look, Richard, you've just recently, along with a few other colleagues of yours, brought out a book called The Journey Inside, Coaching to the Core.
Mm.
And there is obviously also information about that at richardhaggerty.co.uk. Or you can just go direct to Amazon and type in The Journey Inside, Coaching to the Core, or Richard Haggerty, and it will come up so you can get your copy. Tell us a bit about the book.
Awesome.
Who came out, what it's about.
Thank you. So here it is. So that's coaching, the journey inside, coaching to the core. What are we on? We've got. Let's have a look. It has got 266 odd pages. We start off with conscious mind, unconscious mind, the emotions, identity, values. Finish up with the soul. And it's a really interesting book. It's quite a unique book, and I'll tell you why. So the first thing is, well, to say, we did this working via Zoom with 7 coaches around the world, and these people who I'm working with, they've worked for. These are sort of big players in their field. They've worked in Dubai for years. They work internationally. They're known as the sort of experts in their field. You know, they've worked for Standard Chartered, Coca-Cola. You know, these are people who've worked for the big companies, and they've developed their own processes. And but they've never taught them before. They've never shared them. So these are ones where people pay literally thousands, tens of thousands to have these people in. And it just happened because I've trained with I've been on other trainings with some of these folk over the years, that when they were doing it, in fact, true story, they saw me recording 28 Days to Hypnosis Success live on Facebook, were inspired by it, couldn't believe that anyone had the energy to put in 5, 6, 7 hours a day, be up to 2 in the morning every day to do that, deliver that content.
And that'll make sense when you look at it in the bootcamp, because there's flip charts which you can see, and the work and prep. Yeah, it's amazing, phenomenal.
Cool, thank you. Well, they literally after we put that out there and went in the bootcamp, they contacted me and said, look, in fact, one of my friends moved back from Dubai. She said, I'm not sure what to do next. I said, write a book about your experiences. You can use it to build credibility, blah, blah, blah. I said I would do that. She called me back a couple of weeks later and said, great, I want to do the book. I want to get 7 top-class coaches, and I want you there. And so that was great for me, because what I wanted to do is I want to take all this stuff with focusing on the unconscious mind, and I want people to be able to use that, because otherwise coaching is too conscious minded. You know, you can get somebody to draw a little graph of your different areas of health and love, and go and take some action. But as we know, people are not taking action a lot of the time. Well, why not? Because there's some resistance inside. And so what I wanted to do is, there were 2 areas. They said, what do you want to write about? And I said, look, metaphor and symbolism and reframing are 2 really key areas. They're not typically explained very clearly. People either write books with like hundreds of metaphors in, not explaining how to do it. I mean, there are loads and loads of these books. They've gone for hours and hours. So then people think they have to learn the metaphor, learn all those stories to be able to use them. And then in terms of reframing, they think that you have to learn hundreds and hundreds of techniques to be able to use that. And it becomes like you have to be an expert and do this course and that course. So I wanted to look at what were the principles that made stories and symbolism effective. What are the principles that made reframing effective? And how could I take that knowledge of what I use as a hypnotist and use it so that coaches could take it from the ground up? That, in fact, anyone, because when I talk about hypnosis, I just mean communication. You know, for me, like basically I'm talking to somebody else, or I'm writing, whatever. Either they're giving me the finger, or they're smiling and they're following along with what I'm saying. I mean, you know, you either, every time you say anything, in a way, it's a suggestion, and either people are following along or they're not. So you really want to have your chops about you anyway. So it's a great book for therapists, coaches, parents, various other people. It's already been featured on HR Director. It's been featured in Choice magazine. It's been featured loads of these. Kindred Spirit did a blog. Recently, it was brilliant, so I had a big feature with them about it, and particularly about the generative change. So if anyone likes what they've done today, we can put a link to that. It's on the website actually, and to the feature. It takes you through some of the basic questions to be able to use symbolism, even beyond what's in the book.
On Kindred Spirit.
Kindred Spirit blog, yep. But there's a link on my website. If you look on the blogs, I've got like a link going directly to it.
Oh, okay, so go to Richard Haggerty.
You can see, absolutely, it's on there. But really, so what happened was a couple of things. I wanted to bring metaphor and symbolism and reframing And I wanted people to be able to use it. I wanted coaches to be able to use it. Honestly, I want hypnotists to be able to use it. So I had to find a way to make it more palatable and social to these guys. And you know what? They absolutely loved it. They said, we thought reframing before was just like, oh, it's not a problem, it's a challenge. They just thought it was like something like that, which is really annoying if anyone ever says that to you. Oh, you haven't got a problem, you've got a challenge. Oh, no, I haven't. I've got a real problem and I'm feeling crap about it. So this was a way to do that. They loved it. They suggested we call it deep reframing because they really, really enjoyed that. And what happened in the end was, as indeed is often the case with these projects, two of us, me and the co-author of the first chapter, ended up doing the bulk of the work. Folk would contribute their chapters, but most people thought if we did a chapter, well, that's done. Honestly, I had to reread and edit those like 20, 30 times each, 60,000 words. So it took 14, 15 months going through that. So honestly, do yourself a favor and get the book. And the reason I say this is not only is it one of the best edited books you'll see in that, it's got all this content in there. It will show you other models as well that you can take and you can use and adapt. It's very clear. We made sure every chapter's got a roadmap. It'll take you through it. It's got a summary at the end. It's got exercises you can do, but it's super clear. And then we had all these kind of things going all over the place, and we had to work with the publisher very clearly to give you a structure. There is a relationship between the conscious mind, the unconscious, emotions, values, identity, but we've broken it down there so you can see how to work through all those areas. The models in there have never been published anywhere else before. There's even like TA, which they've taken and transformed and used in a coaching context. We've got some ways of being, which is a special NLP model working at the level of values and identity, which has not been taught before. We had permission to write, I think for the first time, basically use a model of working at the level of identity, and the creator of that model gave permission for one of their students to be able to write that up and bring that to the book. So that's so it's nice. It will give you. It's not going to go anything like as advanced as we've gotten today here, but it gives you some solid models that you can use. And if you've got any interest in metaphor, symbolism, reframing, it's a good resource to start with. If you like it, please leave a review on Amazon because that will help us all out. And if there is anything that anyone wants to talk about in terms of transforming themselves, they've got a block, they want to kind of build, have some help moving forward, or you want to have an experience like Alex has had today, then please get in touch.
Excellent. Thank you, Richard. It has been an absolute pleasure. Respect to you, sir. And thank you. Yeah, everyone go to richardhaggerty.co.uk. Also go to Amazon and get the book, Coaching to the Core, or to be completely correct, The Journey Inside Coaching to the Core. And we will see you next. It's supposed to be next week, but you know what? Because we're currently in this COVID-19 madness, the chances are that I'll probably release another interview every couple of days. So keep checking back at hypnosisweek.com. Thanks again,
Awesome.
Richard.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful to see you again. Thank you for inviting me.